I'm sorry, nobody believes in any household that you should spend more money. Think about what a debt ceiling is. It is your child having a credit card, and they spent all the money up. But you've done it year after year where you only kept lifting the debt limit for it. Yeah. And now you owe more on the credit card than you make an entire year, because our deficit is larger than our whole economy.
And our teenager is Hunter Biden, and he's a crackhead with a Russian hooker habit. Other than that, this all ought to come to a happy conclusion, don't you think? Another week in America. Another Al Sharpton eulogy. Nobody gives a eulogy like him. You know, depending on what you're looking for. If you're looking to get the Jews in Crown Heights killed, then, you know, he's your go-to guy, that's for sure. Want to have a race riot? He's your guy. That's why NBC News hired him to be a journalist. I'm making quotation marks with my fingers. One of America's leading journalists. He's a premier award-winning journalist, the Rev Al Charlatan. I still miss the old purple velour jogging suit, gasoline-colored hair Al Charlatan, the Tawana Brawley edition Al Charlatan. You know, we should have, maybe we should make Al Sharpton action figures. We should have Al Sharpton action figures. What do you think? And have, like the early edition, you get a collector's set, different phases of Al Charlatan throughout the years. I think that'd be fun. You know, he was ordained a minister when he was like 2 or something. I think he was 11 or 12 when he was ordained a minister. I'm making quotation marks again with my fingers. Well, happy Monday, and welcome. I hope that you had a splendid weekend. I certainly did. I went to Chicago, Illinois. My best girl and I, we flew on Saturday to Chicago, Illinois, and came home last night. A quick family visit there, and lots of stuff going on. And I hope to get into that a little bit later on today. But the Democrats give me a lot of stuff to cover today, too. Not just Al Charlatan, although the New York Post has a great headline. Al Charlatan. Wait, they misspelled it. It says Sharpton. Al Sharpton makes explosive eulogy at Jordan Neely funeral. That's not all that was explosive. And also Daniel Penny. He's the former Marine on the subway that found himself in the middle of an imbroglio in New York City. Daniel Penny breaks silence on Jordan Neely subway death. That was Al Charlatan was eulogizing Jordan Neely, of course, on Friday. And now Daniel Penny is compelled to come out and say, I am not a white supremacist. I think Al Sharpton should have to declare that he's not a white supremacist, too. And in the meantime, in New York City, the city that never sweeps, woman shoved into train, man slashed during violent weekend on New York City subways. But Daniel Penny wasn't there. You know what? You know, we should have like a Daniel Penny Institute in New York City where they train people, kind of like the Guardian Angels, but the Daniel Penny Institute, and field thousands and thousands of Daniel Pennies on the streets and on the subways of New York City and the Staten Island Ferry, too. Why not? Because they got, that Working Girl, that movie that was pretty good. And that was before Alec Baldwin had shot and killed any women, as far as we know. So, the Daniel Penny Institute, we should open it in New York City and train people to stop lunatics. And the Reverend Al Charlatan at the thing, he said, I'm going to paraphrase now, we have too many crazy people on the streets. And I've been talking about that for a long time, so it's nice to see the Reverend Al Charlatan catch up. Of course, he says it for all the wrong reasons and comes to all the wrong conclusions because he's the Reverend Al Charlatan and an award-winning NBC News journalist. So we got that going. The New York Times, they have an incredible piece. They've got an op-ed. They have an op-ed saying that if you've heard anything about the border, it's because of fear-mongering. It's because of fear-mongering that nobody should talk about the U.S.-Mexico border because, you're a bad person if you talk about the U.S.-Mexico border. Turn a blind. This is the New York Times, the New York, or as it is commonly known, the New York Stinking Times, the New York Stinking Times, commonly referred to as the New York Stinking Times. And this is a pretty amazing one. They have this woman. Is she a woman? I wouldn't want to prejudge the situation. She appears to be outwardly, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything today, does it? If you're hearing about the border, this is the headline of the story. It's the New York Times, a newspaper. Someone is trying to scare you. If you're hearing about the border, someone is trying to scare you, is the headline. Okay. If you're reading the New York Times, someone is trying to scare you. But we'll get into that because this dim-witted woman, extremely dim of wit, typed up a piece that is completely disconnected from reality, unhinged. You know, she's a lefty. She thinks she's a liberal, but she's a lefty. So we got that going for us. And, you know, the usual stuff with Democrats. Nebraska police arrest 6 at state capitol. It was an insurrection. But the news media won't cover it because it's their insurrection. And their insurrections from Seattle and Portland to Chicago and New York and Washington, D.C. And, you know, the thousands of injured police, the billions in property damage, the dozens murdered. Pay no attention to that. Nebraska police arrest 6 at state capitol, including woman, how do we know it's woman, who punched state trooper amid, listen to this, abortion, trans debate. See, they're talking about abortion and transgenderism, which is, these are two really, you know, like the 5 pillars of Islam. These are the 2 pillars of Democrat partyism. And what do trans people have to say about abortion? Oh, that's right. Men can give birth now. Men can have babies, and I think some women can still also. But this is more wackadoodle-doo from these people. And in Nebraska, no less, in the middle of the heartland of America where the Democrats have infected the place. Honestly, this whole ideology is spreading like herpes in the 1970s. It's, genital herpes within, and oral, it was all over the place, but never mind that. The incident in which a woman punched a trooper in the chest was caught on security video, but pay no attention. They're not committing acts of seditious conspiracy like James Comey and John Brennan of the FBI and the CIA, nothing like that. It's because they're lefties and they're okay. And because Democrats are still on the loose, as the Rev Al Charlatan suggested at the Eulogy on Friday. And I got a question for you, too. You know, since Jordan Neely died in that tragic incident that began on a New York City subway a while back, how many people have been murdered in New York City since then? That Al Charlatan and the news media are paying no attention to because it can't be used by the Democrat Party to racially polarize the country and theoretically benefit the Democrats on Election Day, which is what everything is about. How many? Let me get more specific. How many POC, as liberals like to say, so-called liberals, how many people of color have been murdered in New York City and across the United States of America since the Jordan Neely incident, the mentally ill person who was thrown out on the street to fend for himself? And then they say, oh, no, he's an artiste. He's a Michael Jackson impersonator. He does the moonwalk. Therefore, he should be able to terrorize your grandmother and threaten to murder everybody on the subway train because he does a good moonwalk. So we got, honestly, how many people have been murdered since then? And here's the correct answer. The New York Times and the Washington Post are not keeping track. CNN is not keeping track. The Rev Al Charlatan is not keeping track. There are no. What about is the Rev Al Charlatan coming to Washington, D.C. for the funeral of the 10-year-old girl that was shot to death last weekend? Because I'm just curious whether Black Lives Matter or whether, really it should be, the BLM. It should be instead of BLM, it should be BLMS. Black Lives Matter sometimes. DOWDC, depending on whether Democrats care. That's it, depending on whether Democrats care. And here's the reality. 99.99% of the time, they don't care. And then they exterminate 40% of the black population in the womb, 400 out of every 1,000 African-American pregnancies terminated, with the woo, woo, woo. That's the Hoover thing, getting the Hoover, whipping the Hoover out. So we got that. Now back to the Democrats. Hey, you were talking about the Democrats. Back to the other Democrats. At MIT, the Massachusetts Gesundheit Institute of Technology, where smart people allegedly go to school. MIT's LGBTQ student government president faces a recall for perpetrating a hate crime hoax. He was going around doing fake anti-LGBTQIA stuff, signs and graffiti and, chalk and stuff. And then it turned out it was him. Oh, but that's okay. That's right. Oh, and in New York, I love this. Here's the headline: Woman sues yoga studio. This is Manhattan again, New York City, which is sinking. I told you last week, geologists say that it's sinking. So don't go there, because soon it's going to be Venice. Fifth Avenue is going to be a canal. We're going to have gondoliers going past Trump Tower there. Woman sues yoga studio for $5 million for, quote, forcing, end quote, her to use men's locker room. Now, that's because this woman has a penis and testicles. See how that goes? And that's going to be a problem going forward, but not with Democrats, because as far as they're concerned, women have penises and testicles. And the thing is, with a lot of Democrats, it's, you know what I'm saying, don't you? Kind of crazy. Speaking of which, that crazy basketball player lady was back at it yesterday. She went to jail in Russia for having her vape with her Splifa Rifa because she likes to get high, Brittany Griner. And she was back playing basketball yesterday, and everyone was shocked to find out that nobody cared. That's kind of the amazing thing. Also, there's video of her topless shooting basketballs in her pool or something. Have you seen this? Do not seek it out. Let me just tell you, you won't be able to unsee it. There's nothing good about this. But we got that. And she's back, and now she says, I definitely want to stand for the national anthem. She was a big not stand for the anthem person, but now she's had just a little bit of a change of heart. Just a little bit, and we'll get to that. But the Democrat Party, and all of this is about the Democrat Party, isn't it? Isn't it, Michael? You got the Rev Al Charlatan and Daniel Penny. They're the lynch mob. They're the party of lynching. They always have been. Trees and Ropes Are Us is a Democrat Party store. And a woman shoved into the subway train in New York City, that was a Democrat that did that, probably to a Democrat. Man slashed, I think it was his face, slashed by a lunatic because of all the mentally ill, crazy people that have been thrown into the subway and the streets of New York. And Al Charlatan thinks it's somebody else's fault, but in reality, it's all his fault. It's all his fault. And I'll get into that too. So yeah, victim transported to the hospital, listed in stable condition, New York City. And the New York Times doesn't cover this. The Washington Post doesn't cover it. They just don't cover this stuff because this is, in the news business, they say this is dog bites man, meaning it's an ordinary, everyday kind of situation. Not man bites dog, which is an unusual circumstance, right? So this is perfectly normal. People being thrown in front of subway trains, into the side of subway trains, having them, going down on the subway and being slashed by a lunatic. Nobody's in custody because the Democrats have reduced the number of cops, and they've made the cops the bad guys, and they've made the criminals saints. It's a Rolling Stones reference, and on and on. So we got that. And the border, if anybody is talking about the border, they're just trying to scare you because that's what the Democrats are claiming now in an effort to keep people from talking about the border. And then, interestingly, the woman that wrote the op-ed was murdered, tragically, in the New York City subway by an illegal alien. And, all right, not really. I just made that part up. But it could happen. Let me just say that. Could happen. And we got the Transgender Abortion Coalition in Nebraska rioting and attacking the police and half dozen arrested. That's okay. Don't worry about that. Another fake hate crime by yet another leftist who can't wait to be a victim. Oh, and Tim Scott. Speaking of which, Senator Tim Scott announcing officially today, and there's a campaign ad that they've put out, a 30-second ad. You got to hear this. He should win the presidency just based on this ad alone. I will share that with you as well. We are at 888-630-9625. Hey, Chris here with some exciting news. Now you can listen to me live on the WMAL app. Doesn't matter if you're in your car, in the office, on the go. The WMAL app delivers crystal clear around-the-clock news coverage anywhere with cell service or Wi-Fi. So don't miss a second of your favorite shows. Download the WMAL app today on the Apple App Store or at Google Play Store. Ah, yes. Did you see have you been to Rome? It's in Italy. It's a big city with a Colosseum and a lot of old things made of stone. And yesterday, a bunch of lefties went to the Trevi Fountain. The Trevi Fountain, a big, wonderful outdoor fountain and great sculptures. It's one of the world's great masterpieces, the Trevi Fountain, of sculpture, of art, anywhere. Been there many times. It's a beautiful fountain. It's a beautiful part of the city. Rome is an incredible place. Italy is the greatest. And a bunch of lefties showed up yesterday with, I guess, bags full of charcoal, and they dumped it all into the water. They waded into the water, and they have their stupid signs, non parliamo fossili. They, they don't like the fossil fuels, and they pour the charcoal, depleted charcoal or something into the water, which will doubtless be impossible to get out of the stone, and they'll have to drain the fountain and spend hundreds of millions of dollars and spend 200 years cleaning the Trevi Fountain. I'm embellishing slightly. And then police, the Italian police, they have great uniforms because, it's Italy. So they waded in and they dragged him out. And it's kind of funny because one of the protesters was being shoved out of the fountain, and a woman, a nice Italian woman, walks up and smacks one of them, just gives her a good smack. Old Italian Scott. I can't quote her because even in Italian, you know that it's cursing, right? And says, hey, and gives one of the protesters a good smack, which is worth the price of admission for that. But the lefties, they went there. And how permanent the damage will be with this charcoal, who knows? But they don't care. Here's the bottom line. They don't care. And they're with a group, a lefty Italian group called Ultima Generazione. Ultima Generazione is the last generation, the ultimate generation, right? They think a lot of themselves. And so they're Jaguar, because that's what they do. Shut up, your face, for crying out loud. And when I saw this yesterday, and then this morning I picked up my Washington Post. It used to be a newspaper some time ago. And they have a lead editorial that Joe Biden is great. And then below that, they've got a piece endorsing radical left-wing extremist mental cases that vandalized the Degas exhibit at the National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C. Oh, excuse me, this was at the National Gallery of Art. The others vandalized the National Portrait Gallery because they're saving the environment. Because, the rising oceans and the Democrat Party and everything. All right, we have a great many crazy stories. And wait till you hear this Tim Scott ad. He should really run for president. Hey, wait a minute. I'm going to get to that, and you're going to listen to this ad, and you're going to say, common sense. Remember common sense? I remember common sense. Now we have to say common sense isn't. Let's go to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Tony. Tony, who is driving close to Washington, D.C., coming out of Middletown, Delaware. Tony, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Yes. Well, first thing I got to give you my campaign ad. If you want confusion to be the order of the day, vote for the Democrat Communist Party, and that should be used widely. But, I just want to say, if this guy, the guy, the Subway guy, the choking guy, got his name again, Penny. Yeah.
Okay. Your microphone is sounds like you're eating your microphone a little bit.
Oh wow! So, did you get my campaign ad?
Yeah, but no, it sounds a little better now. Whatever you did, you're making an adjustment. It's good. Go ahead.
Anyway, so anyhow, this guy is a black guy. I mean, this isn't even a story, and that's what's so sick and sad about where we are as a nation today. And then if this guy out in Iowa, if those students would have been black and the same lunatic killed those students, then it would have been a whole race war issue. Not that the guy's crazy, but automatically he'd be instead of a crazy guy, he'd just be a white supremacist. So unfortunately, we're being led by those that basically confusion pimps in the Democrat Party. So we just got to either find a way to combat their confusion-based ways, or we're gonna suffer badly.
Yeah, well, listen, I think you're right about pretty much everything you said there. And I like confusion pimps. I like that because they're definitely pimping confusion, and confusion is their friend. And given that they have secured information dominance and media dominance, cultural dominance in the United States, they use their ill-gotten power very effectively and quite perpetually, honestly. But you start out by saying of Daniel Penny, who was the ex-Marine, is the ex-Marine who stopped the crazy person on the train who tragically died, Jordan Neely. You're right. If he had been black, then it wouldn't be a news story. That's just a straight up fact, because the Democrat Party uses, and again, the party of the Confederate States of America and Jefferson Davis and the Civil War, the party of Nathan Bedford Forrest and the White Knights of the KKK, the party of Jim Crow, the party of standing at schoolhouse doors, the Democrat Party. They use race today to divide and polarize in the way that the left uses race to divide and polarize all over the world. And now the left is here, the real left. These aren't liberals. This is the left, and the left divides and conquers. They destroy as soon as they conquer, and they destroy and root to their power grab as well. But it's true that if Daniel Penny had been black and Jordan Neely's black, then it's a non-news story, and Al Sharpton's not there, and the news media is not there. It's just another day in New York, right? That's no big deal. Or Chicago, or Baltimore, or Washington, D.C., or Los Angeles, or San Francisco, or shall I go on? Because I could. Now, let me just share this with you, Tony. In Chicago this weekend, this is just this weekend, the Chicago Sun-Times headline, Chicago gun violence. They always call it gun violence, like the guns are going around on their own. They got little legs and they're running around. No, it's Democrats with illegal guns, because they've banned the handguns, and you can't get a concealed carry permit. So they're all illegal. They're criminals that have illegal guns. And Chicago gun, it's really Chicago Democrat violence. The problem is not our guns, it's your sons. The problem is not our guns, it is your sons. Get your sons under control, and then we can stop talking about all this, because it won't be happening. How about that? I have firearms. They don't go around shooting people in Washington, D.C., because it's not about the inanimate objects. It's about the people that possess them, you see? And you're raising generations of people with no moral compass, with no sense of humanity, no regard for human life, which begins with abortion as choice. And what is it now, 64 million abortions or whatever it is choice. Oh, okay. Cut the population of the country by like 120 million people, but never mind that. That's choice, and that's what they call it, and that's fine, and that's, you do whatever you want to do. There's the beginning of no regard for human life. Try going to church. Go to church. Not that I go all the time, but I live as a good Christian lives. In any case, enough about me. So we've got gun violence, 2 killed, 24 wounded. 24 wounded in weekend shootings. That's in Chicago, Illinois. In Chicago, Illinois alone. And the Rev Al Charlatan will not say anything about that. And the New York Times won't say anything about that. And the Washington Post won't say anything about that. And CNN won't say anything about that. And these are all Democrat front groups, obviously. A man was shot to death Friday evening in Riverdale on the far south side. And a 17-year-old boy was shot to death in the North Lawndale neighborhood early Saturday. And Al Sharpton doesn't care. Can I say that loud enough? Al Sharpton doesn't care. And then 24 more people were wounded. I mean, this is like, how many people in the last year of President Trump's presidency? I believe we had 3 troops killed in Afghanistan. Right? And in Chicago, I'm talking about a year in Afghanistan. And this weekend in Chicago, and this is kind of a low number, 2 killed, 24 wounded. That's not actually a very high number for Chicago. And again, how many people have been murdered in New York City? How many people have been murdered in Baltimore, in Washington, D.C., since the Jordan Neely incident aboard the subway train where Jordan Neely tragically died? And he's, he was a mentally ill person who now is being sold to the public, like he's Michael Jackson himself, right? Amazing stuff. Let's go to the Reverend Al from the events of Friday when the funeral was held in Harlem, New York City, of course. And the Reverend Al, soundbite number four. The Reverend Al, he's given on Friday in Harlem, New York City, the eulogy for Jordan Neely only because he was killed in a conflict with a white guy. All right? That's the thing. The Reverend Al.
Jordan was not annoying someone on the train.
So he was threatening to kill them.
Jordan was screaming for help.
He was threatening to kill people, saying he didn't care if he went to jail. Look, yeah. And
we keep criminalizing people with mental illness. People keep criminalizing people that need help. They don't need abuse. They need help.
Whoa. Yeah. Well, excuse me, what the hell you been doing for the last 45 years? Can I just ask? And every damn Democrat in New York City that's been running the place into the ground, it's on you, you morons. You are the people in charge. I don't know if you're aware of this, but you've been in charge for a generation, and it's maybe on you that there are mentally ill people thrown onto the streets to fend for themselves and end up with tragic endings. Maybe it's you. Just saying. Now, here's the crazy thing. I agree with him, basically. Now, he wouldn't agree with me because, he'd change his mind in about a half a second. And I said, well, you're right. We need to institutionalize mentally ill people for their own good and for the good of society because the United States of America has become an open-air mental institution. New York City has become an open-air mental institution. Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Chicago, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland have become open-air mental institutions. And the solution for mental illness is not, you're on your own. Right? You fend for yourself. Like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, where the kid who wanted to put on a show is living in the tower and he's throwing the birds out the window and they're falling to their death. It's honestly like Blazing Saddles, where the Reverend wants to save Sheriff Bart, but then sees that he can't save him, and so he says,
"Son, you're on your own."
And that's it. This is the solution that the Al Sharptons and the Democrats in New York have come up with after long consideration, decades even, generations of consideration. The solution is we'll throw them out on the street and see what happens. Well, the results are in, and now we've seen what happens. They wreck our cities. They make them barely livable, barely inhabitable, and it leads to all kinds of terrible negative consequences, like people being thrown in front of subway trains, as happened this weekend in New York, and people being attacked by mad slashers, as happened this weekend in New York on the subway train. And who do you think is doing all this? And in Chicago, how many dozens have to be shot every weekend before you do something about your sons? We're going to ban guns. No, we should ban your sons. Well, that says, well, you should let us abort them all. Yeah, kill all the kids. There you go. That'll solve the problem in the long run, and more parking for everyone. Later on, you're going to have to wait for more parking. But Al Sharpton makes explosive eulogy at Jordan Neely funeral. When they choked Jordan, they put their arms around all of us. No, they didn't. No. And I don't know who they are, but it's you. You know, you are the they here. You're the one who is throwing people out on the street. Subway choking victim Jordan Neely was laid to rest on Friday and eulogized, ironically, by the Rev Al Charlatan, who told a packed church that when they choked Jordan, they put their arms around all of us. It was a love embrace. They put their arms around all of us. Charlatan's explosive comments came 3 weeks after Neely. How many people have been killed in Chicago? We just had, 20-something and 2 killed just this weekend. And where's the Reverend Al? Where's the Democrat Party? Where's the news media? Where's the coverage of all the funerals? Where? That's what I want to know. I'm pounding the desk. His explosive comments came 3 weeks after Neely, who had a long history of mental illness and police run-ins, that's generous, more than 42 arrests, died when former Marine Daniel Perry wrapped him in a chokehold during an outburst on an F train. Somebody's going to write a song about the F train. Probably already is one. But they keep mentioning the F train like we care what train it was in New York City. On the F train. Oh, really? On the F train? Oh, that changes everything. In Manhattan. Because when they choked Jordan, they put their arms around all of us, Sharpton told a packed Mount Nebo Baptist Church in Harlem on Friday. All of us have the right to live. Oh, now he's pro-life. Is he pro-life now? Because now all of us have the right to live. Oh, he's a right to life, Reverend. Except he's not. He's the abortion king of reverends. Just don't be ridiculous. So, also we're hearing today that that Daniel Penny I thought they had bypassed the grand jury system and just charged him outside of the usual, because they got the George Soros radical there, prosecutor in New York City. But I'm told now today that his case may be brought before a grand jury today. Which I thought they felt no need for because, they're fascists. But never mind that. All of us have a right to live. That's ironic. Can we get the soundbite of no, we don't need it right now, but just for our file, Al Sharpton saying all of us have a right to live. He obviously doesn't believe that. That's not the Reverend Al. That's not his thing. And Daniel Penny breaks his silence on the Jordan Neely New York City subway death. And the headline is, quote, "I am not a white supremacist," end quote. Well, who said you were? Oh, the entire Democrat Party and therefore the news media. But never mind what's really going on in the country. Let's just pay attention to this one shiny little thing over in the corner of the room while the world is closing in. And by the way, he's right about the mental illness thing. I've got something for you on that coming up. Al Charlatan and I agree on something.
Y'all pardon me. I do my hair. I do not curl my brain. Because when they choked Jordan, they put their arms around all of us. All of us have the right to live.
Yes. Well, selectively, of course. Now, I want to share a sound bite with you because this is crazy. This is John F. Kennedy from 1963. He was president of the United States. It was before a communist shot him in the head with a Mannlicher rifle and murdered him. Communists, they kill everybody. And here's John F. Kennedy talking about the number of people. When 1963, there were about 180 million people, the population of the United States of America. Now we're 330 million people. Here's John F. Kennedy in 1963.
With respect to mental illness, our chief aim is to get people out of state custodial institutions and back into their communities and homes without hardship or danger. Today, nearly 1/5 of the 279 state mental institutions are fire and health hazards. 3/4 of them were opened before World War II. Nearly half of the 530,000 persons in our state mental hospitals are in institutions with over 3,000 patients.
I'm sorry, 530,000 people with a population of 180 million people. And the numbers are all over the place today, but the largest number I've been able to find, the largest number of people in mental institutions today would be 170,000 people, residents in mental institutions. And the Washington Post a couple of years ago said it was more like 45,000 people, okay? Now, this is a clue, you see. The NRI, the mental institution organization, 2014, the year for which the most recent data is available, mental health providers said that there are over 170,000 residents in inpatient and other 24-hour residential treatment beds on any given night. 170,000 with a population of 330 million. And this is the highest number I could find. Washington Post said it's a small fraction of that. And there's a clue there. I know where the rest of the mentally ill people are. They're in my neighborhood. They're outside my building in the morning. They are roaming the streets of New York and the subways, and Al Charlatan wants to blame society or something, and not himself and the Democrats that have been running the city into the ground. But I'm here to tell you the truth, and the truth is that we have a mental illness crisis in the United States of America. And the solution is not to throw the mentally ill out onto the street, which is what we're currently doing. And John F. Kennedy, who had a sister, by the way, that was involved in the system. Now, what do we do about all these mentally ill people? We used to have a great big mental hospital in Washington, D.C. They kicked everybody out and gave it to the Department of Homeland Security because we need more state security apparatus and more crazy people, mentally ill people, on the streets, on the sidewalks, sleeping and stealing and killing.